Okay, folks, so I think it's a good time to recap what we covered up until now. So starting Django project, starting Django app, configuring settings, creating models, making migrations, adding models to admin, creating function-based views, configuring URLs, creating templates with Bootstrap, and using context in templates. So as you can see, it's already a pretty long list. So maybe let's go through that list into more detail. So let's have a look at the Django overview just to have a quick recap. So after building a Django project, it comes with its own settings and URLs and database. Settings is a Python file named settings.py. Then we have urls.py, and out of the box, Django comes with SQLite database, which is a separate file. It's a very simple, free to use database, but it can be replaced with something like Postgres, MySQL, MariaDB, Oracle, I think. And so it comes with a very basic database, but it works for development and testing. But then we can build apps. So each app has its own models, views. We have to create a new URLs file for each app because it doesn't automatically gets created. By default, we're supposed to keep all the routing in the main URLs file in the project-wide folder. But it's a good practice to have URLs in each app. And then we have templates. Each app has to have its own templates if there's supposed to be a web page associated with that app. So we can build app 2, app 3. So each time it follows the same pattern. So let's talk about each component. Models is where we keep our Python models as a class. Each model is a class, and each model represents a table, a separate table in a database. So after doing the migrations, we synchronize our Python-based models with the database. Then we have views. Views is a file where all the logic happens, so all the processing happens. Up until now, we did something very simple. We just collected some data from the model and added that to context and just chose the template to use and added that context to the render function. But that's the idea behind views. That's where the logic happens. Obviously, it can be very, very complex, but we will see that in the future. Then we have URLs. So I mentioned before, it's where the routing happens. We create URLs file for each app just for housekeeping. If we have a lot of apps and there's a lot of URLs coming with those apps, it's better to keep them separated. But then all those URLs are being put into the main URL anyway, included into the main URL, and that's where the actual routing is happening. And then we have templates. Templates are HTML files where all the rendering is happening. So we use those templates in views to put the context in and render a website. We actually used a Bootstrap template to build on to make our project look nice and put minimal effort into the design. Okay, so that's the overview. So starting apps, we just type into the terminal Python manage py, and I didn't mention manage py because it's not exactly something that we change or develop. It's just a tool that comes with Django. So that's something that's like a gateway for using different commands, Django commands. So for example, start app is one of the commands that we can use with Django, and that generates a folder with all the files required for each app. And then one thing we have to always do after creating starting a new app is adding that the name of that app into settings py into installed apps list. We also added some other settings such as static URL, static files dirs, media URL, and media root. That's just for being able to tap into static files and media files, where static files are preloaded files that we kind of just drag and drop to folders, whereas media files are ones that we upload via Django. So we uploaded 2 models, and then we can tap into those models and use the media that come with the with models. Okay, models. So that's where we build our database. We use Python for it. So we describe how each field is supposed to behave, and we name them, and we choose the types and so on. So it's just using Python to then be translated to SQL, and that's where we use the migrations. So to make that synchronization, make those migrations, we go to terminal and we type Python manage py make migrations. And as you can see there, you can also type in the name of a app, and that's how you tell Django that only make migrations on this app and don't touch any other apps, because maybe we're working on something else and we don't want to make migrations yet, but we are sure that air pollution is fine. We can work on air pollution, we can make migrations, and then with Python manage py migrate, we actually synchronize that database. So make migrations only prepares the migrations, and then migrate actually kicks off the changes. So adding model to admin, that's optional, but it's very useful for, at least for the beginning, before you start using a software that you use for database management. It's a very good tool for managing your database, and you have an access to it straight out of the box. So it's pretty powerful thing. But the only thing you have to do every time you build a new model, you need to import it into admin.py file and register in admin site. And then we build some function-based views. Function-based are very simple views. They don't require that much knowledge in Django. So we basically build a function that takes a request as an argument, and then we can do our logic there. For now, we only did something very simple. So in all apps, we put all the apps. So my app model.object.all. So we take all the objects from my app model, and we put that as a my apps context. So inside of the context dictionary, we put my apps key value pair, and then as a value we put those apps. And then page, we just take the path to that page. And at the end, we just return a render function with the request, template, path, and the context. So that's a very simple function-based view. And then we configured some URLs to make sure that Django knows which view you use for each URL that you type into browser. So as I mentioned before, it's like a cascading situation here. We first build the URLs for each app, and then we include them using the include function in the main URLs py file. So then we need the templates, HTML templates. We split them between base HTML and internal, in this case, index HTML. The idea is to extend the repetitive part, such as nav bars, footers, and so on. For this project, we are using a bootstrap template to make it pretty. And then we covered using context in templates. So first, well, it doesn't have to be from models. You can put any context you want. It can be context that is hard-coded, or it takes it from maybe date, today's date or whatever. So basically, context is something that you put into your templates. But the most powerful thing is you can tap into the database and take data directly from the database and put it into the template. So first we build a model, and obviously we have to migrate it with the database. Then we build views, and we include the model into the views. And then using objects.all, in this example, we take all the entries from my app model and we store it in context. And then we return it in a render function. And then URLs take care of the routing. So when we, as you can see here, path empty string, which means there's nothing behind the domain name. In our case, it's localhost 8000 because we are just developing. But if your website is called www.example.com, then after slash, this is the route that we are looking at, just nothing behind the slash. And that route goes into the main URLs file. It gets included there. And then in HTML file, we use that context to render the content of the web page. And as you can see here, we called in context dictionary, we called all the apps my apps, and then we can tap into it simply. For in this example, we make a for loop and we iterate over my apps from the context dictionary. So as an example, this model here is rendered using one of the apps in my apps model. And in here we have a for loop iterating over my apps, and each app is called app. And then, for example, the name is by tapping into app.name. Then we have app.image.url to use the URL of the image that we uploaded with this with this app, and then there is app.description at the bottom. So that's pretty much it when it comes to what we covered up until now. It's a pretty long list, as you can see. We only scratched the surface of each of these topics, but we will get into the detail soon enough. And one more thing, why Django? So some folks ask me, why am I using Django for this project? Well, one easy answer is because I know Django and I kind of want to share what I know. But at the same time, I also fell in love with Django. It's the first framework that I used for building something useful. And it's pretty powerful because it uses Python in the background. So whatever you come up with, you can put that into your views.py file and do the magic happening in front of your eyes. And if you deploy it on Heroku, you have access to it anywhere you go. So if it's something useful, you can use it actually for everyday use. Django is quite hard to learn. It's not as lightweight as Flask or Falcon, which also use Python, but at the same time, it comes with a lot of interesting features that I want to cover here. And also very important aspect of Django is the fact that there is a lot of support for it. There's a lot of users of Django. So the community is pretty vibrant and there's a lot of people who can help you with your problems. And at the beginning, it's a very good thing. And also there's a lot of jobs out there that are looking for Django developers. And even if it's not Django developers, if there is someone who's looking for Flask developers or Python developers, if you can show that you can use Django, then you can use Python and any other framework because it's one of the most heavyweight frameworks for web development with Python. So knowing Django can open a lot of doors for you. Okay, so nothing else to say but forward, set grandma in the snow, and to understand that you have to have some friends from Finland or be Finnish. Okay, thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.